Welcome to the Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community, a space where justice meets action and community voices rise. Each episode, we bring you stories from the front lines, changemakers, disruptors, and everyday heroes who are building a more just, equitable, and liberated world. This is more than a podcast. It's a call to listen, learn, and move together. You're just listening to music from the incredibly talented Stephen Kong. You can find him on Spotify and Bandcamp. Today we have with us Reymundo Juan Armendariz. Reymundo is a longtime activist and organizer in the Chicano, Mexicano, Latinx community and co-founder of Community Agency for Resources Advocacy and Services, CARAS, a culturally based organization serving the South Santa Clara County. Reymundo has worked in the nonprofit world for 27 years, providing youth justice advocacy, mentorship, and services, as well as housing and immigration rights and cultural awareness programs. Reymundo was a movement baby, born to a 1960s Chicana feminist activist and a formerly imprisoned state-raised father incarcerated during the prison gang wars of the 1960s. He is currently the executive director of the community organization he founded, CARAS, now in its 14th year of operation. Oh, hi, Reymundo. I'm so excited to see you again. It's been a long time. How are you doing today?
Good. Just recovering from, we had a tamale festival on Saturday and like 20,000 people showed up.
So wow. No, that's cool. Did you help organize that too?
Yeah, me and my sister and our staff, we've been organizing the tamale festival since 2014. So this is our 10th or 11th annual.
Wow, that's cool. No, you do so much incredible work, and you've made so many great contributions, and I'm really excited and honored that you're here this morning.
Thank you. It's good to see you too. It was really great. It was great working with you. I never forgot you. So
yeah, no, same here. No, I loved our conversations in the office. So that's why when I thought of this, it's like I just need to talk to Reymundo again because I feel like you have so much wisdom, so much knowledge. So I'd love to just talk more about the work that you've been doing since we last spoke.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So just starting, in the background, what first drew you to working with at-risk youth and community organizing? Was there a personal experience or turning point that inspired your path?
Yeah, my mom and father. My mom was an activist from the 1960s. She's a Chicana feminist activist from the 1960s. So she raised me and my sister on that movement. My friends, I had a friend at National Center for Youth Law. She said we were movement babies. So I'm a movement baby. So I was born from an activist, and so she raised us in the movement. And my dad, who was unfortunately incarcerated for a lot of his life, incarcerated. He uses the phrase, or they use the phrase, state raised. He was raised in the youth facilities here in California. So I know that for me, that was always on my radar. That's an issue that impacts Chicano, Latino, Mexicanos in California that needs to be addressed, and so I just gravitated towards that because I feel like, and I still do, I still believe that we have to, in order for us to impact future generations and kind of impact in a positive way the future of our community, then we have to stop allowing our youth to be incarcerated and becoming institutionalized. And so that's what drew me to the work. But yeah, both of my parents, my dad was an activist in prison. He started a program called Empleo with a number of prisoners in the 1960s. And so they would they did re-entry while in prison with those who were going home to prepare them to be, find employment when they came home. Empleo means employment in Spanish. And so they formed a Empleo program, which still exists to this day. And on my mom's side, she raised us in the Chicano movement. She was a farm worker. Both my parents were farm workers growing up. My grandparents are farm workers. My great-grandparents are farm workers. And so I come from that tradition. And so my mom raised us in the UFW movement. Growing up, Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta were huge icons in my household. They were like the stars in our household. They were celebrities, even though not very many people. I didn't realize that only, I guess, in our family they were held in such high esteem. Okay. I didn't know that the rest of the world did not see Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta as like huge icons. So that was surprising. But no, my mom raised us in the movement, and that movement evolved, right? The Chicano movement in the 60s, really started with the UFW, then it moved on to the Chicano student movement, and then it moved on to other movements. And so my mom evolved with it. And she's 82 years old. She still organizes. She was with us at the Tamale Festival. She
Okay.
still helped us organize. We organized an immigration legal clinic last Saturday. Helped us
Wow.
organize that too. Probably, I think me and my sister, I always talk about how me and my sister combined don't reach my mom's level of organizing at all.
Really? Wow. And
Yeah.
you're really incredible yourself, just by yourself.
Well,
That's
yeah,
cool.
between us, we got 30 years apeace, and we still can't reach her.
No, so just did you grow up with like stories of activism even as a very young child?
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, yeah, just stories of activism growing up and seeing it, witnessing this stuff because we were there, like everything from the formation of CRLA. My mom worked at CRLA, California Rural Legal Association, for 10 years. We were there from the beginning. We were little kids going to CRLA office where my mom worked. United Farm Workers Movement, marching. My mom took us on marches. We marched for
Wow.
Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta in the fields around Santa Clara County, San Benito County. Yeah, Watsonville. So we marched all in this Central Coast and South Bay. When we were little kids, we thought everybody lived like this. I didn't know that my friends weren't marching and their parents weren't marching. I didn't know that everybody at elementary school didn't.
That's so wonderful.
Planning meetings. I thought everybody did this. Yeah,
Hey,
but
everyone should do that though.
everybody should do that. I think some of the biggest stories I think we have is one, we went to Cesar Chavez's funeral, and we there was like the news said there was 30,000 people, but there was many, many more people than
Yeah.
30,000 people at the funeral. We met Martin Sheen and Jesse Jackson because
Oh,
they were
wow.
at the marches. They marched. We marched with Cesar's casket for like a long ways, and then a lot of us marched from Delano to 40 Acres, which was like a really long, like 18-mile march. That was really
Hmm.
intense in the heat because Delano's really hot, and Cesar passed away during the really hot season. So we all did that together. We took a bunch of kids, a bunch of like, little hood kids. I mean, that's always been who I work with. It's always been who I gravitate towards is all the kids who are impacted by the system. Kids from the neighborhood, kids. We brought a bunch of little cholos and cholas to go march for Cesar Chavez, like two vanfuls, and we ended up getting separated from our van, so we got stuck in not Bakersfield, Delano, and so we had to like hitch a ride home with a bunch of the youth that were caught in the march. The bus left us, and so that was interesting, having that. Luckily, there was some other activists down there, including my cousin who was there, and he was also a part of the march, and they some Native American activists as well from up here, and so they gave us a ride back. We got to ride in the back of a truck all the way up from Delano to Gilroy, which was illegal, but we still did. We still made it. Yeah, but other than that, I mean, my there's just a lot of activism stories that we have as far as like growing up, even just on our own. I think we've marched for Prop against Prop 187 and Pete Wilson back in the 90s. We marched against Prop 209, which was I guess when they disbanded affirmative action to be used in UC campuses and university campuses across the state. We marched against Prop 51, which created the law to be able to charge 15-year-olds as an adults and have 15-year-olds serve time in adult facilities. What else? I mean, there's just a million stories. I have stories as well from my dad's side as well, growing up. Being impacted by gangs and prison and all those things also happened. So at the same time that my mom had us involved in activism, the streets definitely touched our family. So, growing up, I remember, vividly things like, waking up to our house being burglarized and like, what seeing the burglars. I woke up, I was sleeping on the couch and seeing the burglars all around me. And when I
Wow.
woke up, I thought they were my dad. So I was like, "Hey, is that you?" And then they ran out the house. There's a lot of stories. I think it's hard to pinpoint one story. I think as far as like legal, I mean, I'm sorry, as far as like community stuff, we marched when my nephew was killed in gang violence. When we first started CARAS back in 2011, one of the first events that we did or organized was a gang violence march for peace, because my nephew was murdered here in Gilroy, and we had we organized a march to kind of alleviate the situation, that to try to lower the tension in the community and to try to stop any retribution or any further gang violence. We had a gang forum based on his loss. He had just come home after 12 years. He was gone for 12 years since he was 18-year-old. He was gone till he was 30. He came home, and then unfortunately he was shot in front of the house of one of my other family members, who was also shot in that same incident. That he survived. What else? We've marched when the cousin that survived that gang shooting was later killed by Gilroy PD. He was killed in by police brutality, police violence. He was high, and he was in his neighborhood down the street from his house, and the cops chased him because he was high. Somebody had called the cops that there was a suspicious character wandering the neighborhood where he lived. So I don't know why he's suspicious, because it was about a block from his house, and they beat him to death. Probably about a block from his house, a block from where my cousin was killed. And so we marched for that situation. We actually started a whole campaign around police brutality in town, and were able to get a lawsuit against the Gilroy Police Department, where my aunt she won $1 million for the case. But of course, that doesn't ever could replace my cousin's life. So regardless of the amount of money that it was, it would never replace my cousin, or fix or repair what happened, or restore the harm that was caused to the community. And so there's a lot of stories. We did a run for peace because of the murder of my cousin, the one who was killed in gang violence. We did a run. There's a Native American ceremony where the youth runs. It's called a spirit run. And so the young people will run with a staff and charge the staff while they're running. They do prayers, and they dedicate their pain, because of course running is painful. That's why I never run. But running is painful, and so during their run, they had this staff that was given to us by a Mexica leader who has a Mexica dance group. Calpuli, they call it in Nahuatl. Calpuli Iscali. Robert Castro did the staff for us, and we ran. And so we had runners volunteer. I actually ran the first mile, but I wouldn't call it running. It was like more of a jog. But everybody else, my son ran, a bunch of the youth from our program ran. So we ran the length of the city, just in honor of all the violence and all the losses that people had, including my nephew Jesse Silos, rest in peace, Jesse Silos, who had been killed in gang violence. And so that city is 6 miles long. And so, I ran the first mile, and then we passed the staff to the next runner. And then we all ran to, San Isidro Park, which is kind of an iconic park. They call it Cholo Park, or Parque de los Cholos. We call it Eastside Park, those of us who used to hang out there. But we ran through Eastside Park, and we ran all the way from border to border. So from the city boundary in the south to the city boundary in the north. So we did that ceremony, and we actually did that ceremony, I think, 3 years in a row. There was the next year, there was a police officer that was killed, and we also ran for him the following year. And then we ran the following year because there was 2 kids that were killed and a police officer killed. And so we ran for all of them. And so, I just have a lot of stories.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I love listening to your stories. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm so sorry for losses. And, you just have such a rich foundation. But I know that you've worn many different hats during your career. So looking back, what thread connects all of those roles together?
I think social justice. I think social justice, seeking justice for BIPOC communities, people of color. I think that's always been the thread that ties everything that we do together. If it's, even our agency. So back in 2011, after I left Public Allies, I started a nonprofit called CARAS, Community Agency for Resources Advocacy and Services, because I know that we were very passionate about social justice, and we wanted recently a very historic nonprofit that we had all worked for We, meaning the founders of CARAS, had all worked for called MAXA, Mexican American Community Service Agency, and they were around in Santa Clara County for about 35 years. Well, they began to disband. There was some controversy, and they began to dissolve and close their doors. And so we needed to start an agency to fill that hole, that vacuum that was created for the Latino community. And so what we did was we formed CARAS, which almost sounds like Maxa Caras. It's very similar, right? Caras means faces in Spanish. And so Caras, we also thought that we wanted to add those pieces or those components that were missing from some of the nonprofits, including Maxa that we worked at. Maxa did some advocacy, but it wasn't like a priority. It was more of like they would advocate, in reaction to policies that impact Latinos. And so we thought that we wanted to be proactive. And so part of Caras was to write advocacy right into the mission, right into the name. And so right in the title or the acronym for Caras, advocacy was written. And so to this day, we advocate for policy around social justice, around immigration, around housing, around education rights, anything that impacts Latinos or BIPOC communities where we live, we advocate around those issues. So some of the things that we've changed was that we changed the policy in Morgan Hill back in 2013. It was one of the issues that we first took on when we first formed, was that Morgan Hill Police Department was impounding the vehicles of undocumented drivers. And so if you were undocumented, usually a farm laborer, farm worker, and you were pulled over, they would take your vehicle and impound it by law. If you don't have a driver's license, they could keep it for 30 days. And so at $185 times 30 days, that would be into like $2,500 or $3,000 at the end of the month that people would have to pay to get their vehicle returned. So oftentimes these, very low income people who do have low income jobs as, working in the fields as farm workers couldn't afford. And so they would lose their vehicle, which of course created a hardship. How are they going to take their kids to school? How are they going to go to their doctor appointments? How are they going to get to work? And so we changed that policy. We were able to organize in the community, have a series of, meetings with the chief of police and the city council, get the support of all the local, grassroots immigrant organizations, including Grumasa, which is a group of indigenous immigrants from the state of Mexico and central Mexico. They all live here in this area, and they're the ones who actually brought the project to us, requesting our help. And so we organized around that, and we changed the policy. So they stopped impounding the vehicles. We did some data research, and I think this is one of the things that helped us, is that we exposed the police that they were making almost $400,000 a year off of the impoundment of vehicles of the most poorest working class people in the community, which is farm workers, right?
Right.
Not only are they hardworking people, but they're also the lowest paid. So that was one of the things that got us when we first formed, took on, and those type of policies are the type of policies we've taken on. Things like for housing, for example, there is some rental control laws that were passed in Gilroy that impacted, the trailer parks as well as low-income housing, where most of the folks who work in agriculture live, right? A lot of farm laborers, a lot of, people who work in hospitality, like hotel room cleaners, landscapers, just the folks that had the lowest wages. And so, again, we fought to get that policy enforced because, the city was actually not enforcing the policy and trying to figure ways out to help landlords get around the policy of rent control, that there is a limitation on how much you can raise rent and how often you could raise rent. And so that's another policy that we've taken on. We've had some, great results. We were able to find some solutions. So, those are some of the advocacy we've done. Also, we've gone to the state capitol and advocated for youth justice. We advocated for SB 823, which is the closure of youth prisons in California. As of 2023, they closed the last youth prison in Stockton, California. But we closed youth prisons. The law says that now instead you have to house young people if you're going to give them long sentences or long dispositions, because the language changes when you're talking about kids in the youth system. Instead of saying a conviction, you say a disposition. Instead of saying a charge, you call it a petition. But anyways, so we closed all the youth prisons. And for me, that was super impactful because my father spent a lot of time in youth prison.
Mm.
So also, if you know anything about California Chicano Latino gangs, you
Hmm.
know that Chicano, the Latino gangs started in youth prison. And so
Oh, okay.
the Norteños and Sureños started in California Youth Authority. So we were
Hmm.
able to close down California Youth Authority, which for me meant a lot because that means that now we can, there will be less kids impacted,
Yeah.
less kids institutionalized, and that means it'll lower the level of gang violence. And so we have seen that result. And I think that going back to the mid 1990s to now, I mean, people will often dispute this, but it's true. If you check the data, is that crime is down, youth crime is down. Even when I was young, in my late teens, early 20s, there was, since then, there's been a lot less involvement in crime and gangs. And so I'd see that in my own community amongst my peers and amongst the generations below me,
Yeah.
younger generations as well. So it's just down.
Yeah, no, that's why I don't like the whole rhetoric of like things are so dangerous right now. It's like, out of control. It's like, no, I've seen like statistics where it's actually showing the opposite, like we're going in a better direction. Whereas like I feel like there's just this like culture of fear that they're trying to yeah, just bring
Absolutely.
up.
Absolutely. You're right. Absolutely. I think it's really being promoted, that whole idea from a lot of the law enforcement community, because I think there's less justification for investing so much funding into law enforcement when you have lower crime rates.
Right.
So when we've gone to the legislature to, taking young people to advocate, taking a lot of the youth in our programs to go speak to legislators and assembly folks. Shout out to Ash Kalra, shout out to Robert Rivas.
Hmm.
Uh, those young people have had an impact in getting reforms passed, like this closure of the youth prisons, which was a huge success. I think a lot of the young people who ordinarily would spend, their youth in prison now have alternatives. Right, there's alternative solutions to long prison terms, which we're happy about. The other thing, we passed SB 823, SB 439, SB I think it was 439, and there's another one I want to say SB 439 raised the level that a kid could be arrested. So now
Okay.
in California, if you're younger than 12 years old, you can no longer be arrested. And I think that we passed that because there's really there's nothing to gain, especially when you consider child brain development from a child being incarcerated as a minor under 12 years old. I think even 12 years old might be too young. But we feel that just from a study of brain science, that when you start incarcerating a child, then their brain evolves or adjusts or develops to be incarcerated. So their
Yeah.
brain develops under the conditions of incarceration. So then really you're training or conditioning young people biologically even or physiologically to continue being incarcerated. And so we passed SB 1391. I think the other one I want to say is SB 1391.
Hmm.
That law stopped the young people. It was a rewriting or a change to Prop 50, where young people could no longer be charged in adult court at 15 and below, or serve time in adult facilities at 15 and below. So SB 1391 was a response to Prop 50 to undo the harm.
Mm.
So all these youth justice reforms are all policies that got us formed
Yeah.
around that we thought were important. We've done some local advocacy with the city councils, with the board of supervisors, with the board of education. But we've had a lot more success, and we have had some successes at the local level, but a lot more success at the state legislature. Um, and other than that, advocacy being a part of the agency's like mission is so that we build leaders and that we bring social justice to the forefront in the
Hmm.
minds of young people and get them exposed to the concepts of social justice. I think that we've
Yeah.
seen working with young people the last 14 years, because our agency has been around now 14 years. It sounds crazy. It was just feels like it was yesterday. But our agency noticed that young people were less and less, either through the school system or because of media, were less and less knowledgeable or
Okay.
less and less exposed to ideas like social justice. And so we wanted to
Yeah.
fill that gap. And so we started a youth advisory council, and we have youth who attend, and they learn both leadership, civic participation, and concepts like social justice.
No, that's wonderful. I actually wanted to explore that further. So, what do you believe that young people need the most in order to thrive, especially those navigating systems that are stacked up against them?
So there's two things. I think one is, of course, dealing with the trauma that young people bring to our offices, right? That they're dealing with that have never
Yeah.
been resolved, and because of either their family doesn't have the resources to resolve them, or their families are broken, and so there's just not like they're not functioning. So it's hard if you're dysfunctional to connect to the resources that you need, or even to be knowledgeable that you need. Um, you know these resources, whether they be mental health or behavioral health services or housing services, whatever it is. So I think young people that come in our doors, we try to connect them to like and get them used to the concept that it's okay to seek help for mental and behavioral health issues. So
Yeah.
we connect them to we have an in-house therapist, and so we connect a lot of these young people, especially the most hardened kids who have been the most impacted, like those who've been incarcerated, those from the streets.
Hmm.
They not only are they have the least resources and the least access to mental health services, but they also have like this obstacle. There's a whole stigma around being
Okay.
using therapy, speaking to a therapist. And so we help them through our youth mentors, through our case managers, and our staff who work directly with young people to get them to accept the idea that it's okay to get therapy, it's okay to deal with your trauma.
Yeah.
We have a lot of young people who've witnessed the, murders in their family, of their
Yeah.
family members, or, long-term exposure to their family members' abuse of, drugs. And that's impactful, right? Growing up, my father was a heroin addict. And so I understand the impact that that has on a young person as a kid to see your parents, strung out on drugs. And it's really difficult to get around that. And so we provide those. I think those are the type of issues. Even kids who are now being traumatized because their parents are undocumented. I
Yeah.
think it's always been an issue, but I think it was behind closed doors. But now with this current administration and maybe the social environment, the last I would say 10 years, it's become more of a issue that's out in public now, right? And so
Yeah.
kids feel the trauma of worrying of their parents being that their parents would be deported, that their parents will be identified as undocumented, that they're going to come home to an empty house, that and they're going to lose their families, of course, and so there's that trauma as well. And so we also are trying to connect the therapist to those kids who are feeling the trauma, who really have real fears. They're not going to school because they're
Yeah.
worried that they're going to come home to an empty house, or their parents going to come pick them up for school and ICE is going to take them.
Yeah.
So there's that. So of course, that's one. Answer one is to connect kids to more mental and behavioral health services to deal with the trauma. And then number two, I think, is valuing. We have to teach this current generation again to value education, because I think
Yeah.
what we're seeing is that a lot of kids have lost hope, or lost trust in the educational system. I think the school to prison pipeline has a lot to do with that. A
Yeah.
lot of kids are overly, punished, and the consequences are really based on like, kids' ethnicity or skin color, right? We noticed that, especially in South County, that, we looked at the data around expulsion, it's all brown and black kids being expelled. But we know
Yeah.
that not only brown and black kids break the rules at school. So why
Yeah.
would they only be the ones who get expelled? And so we know that there's like implicit bias that's written into policy, or
Hmm.
carried out by the decision makers, superintendents, and the expulsion boards. And so I think that if we can get kids to value education again, then we can get them to advocate. And we did get them to advocate, but I think that a lot of them just don't. They don't. How would you say? They just lost faith and trust in the school system, and so a
Right.
lot of them are just checked out. They're really checked out from high school by the time they hit high school.
Yeah.
And so that's a thing. Another big issue is just getting kids to believe in the school system again.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing that. And, it's such beautiful work that you do. So I also want to talk about this. So what does culturally competent work look like to you and why is it so vital?
For us, I think, and it goes back. This is something I remember from Public Allies. That it's one of the mottos. One of the mottos that I grew up with was that nothing about us, right? So don't nothing about us without us. We always need to be a part of the conversation. So that's what cultural competency means to me. So what that means, if we're going to talk about policy or we're going to implement program and deliver services, then somebody who looks like me should be delivering that service, right?
Mm,
Somebody who comes from my background should be delivering that service. If you don't understand what it means to be on the receiving end of racism,
yeah,
then how can you implement racial justice programming or racial justice based programming, right? How can you deliver a workshop on racial justice or talk about, things like racial disparity or disproportionality, get kids to understand it if you've never experienced it, right? And so we make sure that we always try to have staff that, reflect the communities they serve. Um,
yeah,
Even immigrant staff, I have immigrant staff who understand what it is to be undocumented, right? And the fears being undocumented before they got there legalized, right?
hmm,
And so a lot of them got legalized, but later on, after years of being undocumented. So, um, they understand that impact. And so they're able to provide that culturally competent. I think, other than just language, because oftentimes people confuse, well, I speak Spanish, so that's enough.
yeah.
It's not enough.
No,
It's
no, no,
absolutely
no.
not enough. You got to understand that there's a lot of subtle nuance to culture, right?
Yeah.
That
And
people don't understand. And so, just the way people communicate it also, right?
right. No, and I was thinking, even as you were talking about mental health services, like it's so critical for people to have that cultural competency. Like what works with, like, some folks might not work like across the board when it comes to mental health.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also understanding that BIPOC communities,
Hmm.
they just they're the way we communicate is differently. It's not just the language that we speak, but how you communicate about something, how you approach something,
Right.
right? When you talk about a really sensitive topic in Latino culture, you can't just directly talk about it directly, right?
Hmm.
Overtly. You have to talk around it and then get to it, right? So I
Yeah.
might ask you how your grandmother's doing, what you guys are doing for the holidays, and then I'm like, can you see a therapist, right? So at
Right.
some point, you inject it and
Yeah.
leave the conversation there, right?
Yeah. No,
And so
it's
there's
needed. It's needed because I feel like there's still so much stigma still, but people benefit so much from like mental health services. That's why I'm, try to promote it too when I can. But yeah, I just feel like people feel like it's a weakness or you shouldn't get help. But it's so helpful though to get that support that you need.
I think right now in the Latino community in the United States, there's a saying says mejor trabajar que hablar, which means that better that you just work and don't say anything. Just keep your
Oh,
head down, right? And so that's
right.
another issue that we're running into, and that really deals with the idea of cultural competency is understanding that that's the
Yeah.
perspective of a lot of the community right now, especially with this Project 2025 and the deportation plan by the Trump administration is that we have to be able to not be silenced and to advocate for ourselves. And so that's a part of cultural competency is finding ways for people to communicate and to bring light to the issues that are impacting them
Mhm.
without putting them at risk, right? Which a lot of people worry about. I
Yeah.
know and I understand. So when we do things like immigration, know your rights trainings or legal clinics, or we recently organized a march, secretly between us, we organized a march.
Okay. I'll keep that a secret.
But in which we've organized like dozens of marches over the years, right? On
Yeah.
police offices, but um, that a lot of the people that are being impacted cannot participate because they're at risk.
Right.
If ICE shows up at our anti-ICE march,
Yeah.
take people. And so
Yeah.
that's like delivering that message and talking to people about that subject, that sensitive subject. It takes a lot of cultural competency, right?
Yeah.
So you feel better if the people delivering that message is somebody who was once an undocumented immigrant, right? Who
Yeah.
understands those. and understands how to talk about that. So yeah, that's a lot of cultural
Yeah.
competence.
No, and I think with that, what you're saying, like, I think that's why it's really important for us to like stand up for folks right now. And like, I'd love to see just our movements having solidarity with each other. Like, what affects one group affects all of us. And, since there's more risk for folks to like show up to those protests, I think that's why we have to be out in the streets and like raising our voices.
Right now, another issue with the cultural competency is how to expand the concept, like you said, across movements. Like we really would like to,
Hmm.
and we've been trying now, we're on our second year. I know we're going to get it right, is build a LGBTQ Latino group,
Okay.
right?
Oh,
For
right on.
Latino youth who are LGBTQ. We've been trying now. This will be our second year. We did get some support from the county, but then they pulled their support. We wanted to, be able to address that issue in a culturally sensitive way. Because it's not that Latino or Mexicano culture is more homophobic or transphobic than any other culture. As a matter of fact, I think that we have this, we have a role that predates the arrival of the colonizers and the Spanish and the conquest, which is the mushe. We've had trans people before they were. We don't call them trans. We call them mushe in Mexico, who have been around for thousands of years, right? And they're basically men who, have the spirit of a woman, a soul of a woman, and so they
Mm.
live as women. And every family would have, pre conquest, pre Columbian times, they that was a esteemed thing to have as a musha in your family, right? Because they often have like a lot of spiritual, like they're believed to have a lot of spiritual knowledge and spiritual power.
Yeah.
So they would often be like spiritual guides or spiritual, leaders. And also they were known because they would care for the elder and the sick, and
Mm.
so that was like an esteemed position to have a mushe in your family. So going back to the whole cultural competency is that we want to be able to, in under the umbrella of Latino, Latinx, Mexicano, Chicano culture, is to include our LGBTQ folks
Yeah.
explicitly so they can be LGBTQ in public and have no stigma.
Right.
Remind our community that this is something that we've always had before colonization, so it's not new, and there's nothing weird or wrong with it. It's something that humans experience. It's part of the human experience. It's always been
Yeah.
a part of the human's experience.
Yeah, no, that's so beautiful. So, what advice would you give to the next generation of youth leaders or advocates who want to follow in your footsteps?
Two things. One is that we are who we're waiting for,
Yeah,
right?
I love that. Yeah.
Don't wait for somebody else to come. There's not some, charismatic leader who's gonna emerge, and we're all gonna follow this one individual. Because one, when that person, is either something happens to them, like they pass away, they're assassinated, or if they have some type of controversy, then the movement dies with them.
Yeah.
We want to really, I think, the message I would say is, you step in and we all step in at different times in the movement, right? And whatever movement we lend ourselves to or whatever issue. And so, we are who we're waiting for. We become the leader when it's time for us, right? It rotates. I think I call it collective leadership. As
Yeah.
lefty as that sounds, I'm a lefty. Just believe that. So I
Right
believe
on.
in
Yeah.
collective leadership. So, there's going to be a time where somebody else who's, needs to lead. There's always like, it's like revolving, like each issue. Like if there's an LGBTQ issue, then an LGBTQ leader will emerge and let's support them.
Yeah.
Documented folks need leadership, then undocumented people will lead that movement, and we need to support them. And that leadership just rotates. It's never invested in only one charismatic leader. So we are who we're waiting for. It's you. If this issue is just something that's passionate that impacts you, then you're the next leader in that movement. And the other thing is leaders build leaders. And so if you I think a lot of folks mistakenly believe that leaders are really focused on just self-development. Really, I think what I've learned from my mom, who's been in the movement forever, is that we're supposed to be seeking out other young folks, other
Yeah.
leaders out in the community to take the reins from us. We're supposed to be replacing ourselves. And so leaders build leaders. And so you show your leadership by lifting up and elevating those around you, right? So you're
Yeah.
always looking for a young person, right? I'm always looking for a young person, a teenager, somebody in their early 20s, to take over for me,
Yeah.
right? And take the reins from me, and practice that leadership. So I will send, invest in them the time and energy and funds. We'll send them to a training, we'll send them to a conference, we'll let them facilitate their own workshops and organize their own conferences and ask them to lead marches or whatever we find opportunities for them to lead and learn those skills and learn that experience, because that's what my mom did to me and my sister,
Yeah.
right? My sister's also heavily involved in the movement, and that's what we did, and that's what I learned from my mom is leaders build leaders, and so it's never about
Yeah.
me. It's always about us.
Yeah, no, I really love that. And have you had those conversations with the young people that you work with yet? Like, just what does leadership look like for them?
Yeah, I get real preachy. I get super. I just had a breakfast with our young staff, the 20 somethings, and I was doing the same exact preaching to them. It's nothing about us without us. We are who we're waiting for, and leaders build leaders.
Yeah, no, I agree. How did they receive that advice that you gave to them?
They actually like it now. They're like, now I know why you're so hard on us.
Okay. Yeah, because you have to, because it's really, I have a lot of hope for the future generations. I think like there's a lot of like negativity too. And I think that's why I love Public Ally so much, because it was like countering that. Like, no, young people have so much potential. We just got to give them the tools that they need.
Absolutely. And Public Allies was hard on us, but for a reason, because
Right.
it's hard,
Yeah.
right? You're going to be disappointed. You're going to be criticized. You're going to be scrutinized. So get used to it, right?
Yeah. Because that's what happens in the real world too.
What happens in the real world? In the end, you're
Yeah.
ready for it. You're prepared for it.
Yeah.
I always tell the story, but I know this one I stopped using it because their eyes gloss over. Is that I remember watching a documentary about in Japan. There's this
Uh-huh.
old sword master who he literally, and they had it. It was on National Geographic. He literally hikes into the mountain, and finds the rocks with the ore himself.
Oh, okay.
Drags the rocks with the ore. This is in modern times. This is now. This is not
Oh,
100.
really? Wow.
He's doing this in the 2000s, right?
Wow.
Old man, he's like in his 70s, climbs a mountain, pulls the ore from the
Wow.
mountain, these big old rocks, drags them down to his house. Then he heats them up, right? And pounds them with hammers and he extracts the metal from the rocks
Oh,
by
wow.
hand in his
Okay.
workshop. So I tell them, like, that's you. I got to go find these rocks. I got to drag
Yeah.
you to my workshop. Then I pound you with hammers. I heat you up with fire till you're super heated, right?
Mhm.
Then I pound you with hammers, right?
Yeah.
Till you're flattened, right? And then this man will get snow from the fresh snow outside and
Wow.
take these heated, flattened ore directly into the ice cold snow, right? That's what I'm doing with you. I'm heating you up, getting you super angry, then I'm being super cold to you, right?
But we also love them. We're
Right?
tender with them too.
He loves his swords. He loves
Yeah.
these swords. He sharpens them, right, by hand. And then by the end, he has like these like most sought after swords that cost thousands of dollars that are super valuable,
Mhm.
handmade that cannot be replicated in the world. I'm like, that's you. We're building
Yeah.
you.
No, I
We
love that.
love you, right? Of course,
Yeah.
got to get you to where you need to be so that you're like super valuable, super acclaimed.
Yeah.
You have all the skills. You're the best at what you do. That
Yeah.
reminds me of Public Allies because
That's
public we heat
No,
you
I
up in
love
the
that. I
cold
love that
room.
analogy. Every time I see a sword now, Raimundo, I'm gonna think of you.
And he's selling these swords for like 50,000. I was like, wow, but they're handcrafted, right? And he loves
Yeah.
it like this. He loves his craft.
No, I love that. So, what does a just world look like to you, and what role do you think all of us can play in building this?
I think a just world, of course, means equity, right? Where we get folks to be to where they need to be, right? If there's been like a history, of course, of oppressing and people and suppressing them and keeping them from access to to resources, not just money, but all resources, whether that be education or training or any resource, including funding, but getting folks there where we're all at, right? Equity is one thing. So I think in a perfect world, a just world, then everybody would have equity, and we all institutions would function with the concept of being equitable, right,
Hmm.
to people. Um, I think also in a just world, I think that we would start expanding the minds of our young people early, because I think if we teach and train young people early to value diversity, to value each other, to understand that they all folks have the right to grow and develop and have access to the best that society has to offer, all the resources society has to offer. If we start early and younger, then I think by the time they become adults, then we won't have to still deal with all these social ills like
Yeah.
racism, prejudice, homophobia, transphobia, classism, sexism. We won't have to deal with those things because young people will be more enlightened. And so I think in
Yeah.
a society, we start having these conversations and teaching these young people much, much earlier. And I think, of course, that there are certain things that are guaranteed, like housing and health and
Hmm.
education. So, if in a just world, people would all have access to housing,
Yeah.
there would be housing for everybody. There would be health services for everybody. And there
Yeah.
would be education for everybody with equal
Yeah.
access to that education.
No, that's what I don't understand about this country. Like, why are people so against like everyone having good health care or education? Like, this is something that we should do. Like, we live here, so we should also take care of each other. So I don't know, it just baffles me when people are against something like that.
I think post World War II, I don't know if you've heard of him, Keynes. Have you heard of Keynes? He was
No, I don't think so. What's that?
I think he was a
Oh,
Keynes was a sociologist and economist. And so
okay.
after World War II, he suggested to rebuild Europe that all the governments reinvest in their populations. And so
Mm,
investing in education and training and, investing in people. And so we got away from that. I think,
yeah.
I think the whole, Milton Friedman and free trade economics, and before that, Friedrich, I can't remember his last name, but he also was teaching people that instead of investing in people, that the elite need to hoard their funds, right? They need to hoard
Wow.
their money, and that
Yeah.
everything needs to be a transaction, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's where we get, like, in the early '80s. Just to date myself, I remember these people, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. They they got their ideas and economic concepts from Milton Friedman and that school of thought, right? But on the opposite end was Keynes, and so I think that we need to go back to that, which is
Yeah.
economically investing in our populations, because that's what builds up a nation. Is when you invest, whether that be education, like funding for education, making sure that everybody has a university education, everybody has a high quality education, housing, everybody has access to high quality housing, and
Yeah.
everybody has access to high quality health. I think
Yeah.
that would lift up people, because I think hurt people hurt people. Another saying that I got
Yeah,
over
I
the
keep hearing that from people too. Yeah.
yeah, hurt people, but I think the opposite is also true. Healthy people will be,
Mm.
will treat others better in a healthy way.
Yeah. No, I hope so. And actually, that's been a common theme I've noticed with the podcast. Like a lot of my guests just say, like, we just want more love and unity in this world. I feel like there's so much division in this world right now, this country,
Yep, for sure,
particularly. But yeah, I think people just have that desire to connect more.
for sure.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time, Raimundo. I really love talking with you. I had such a wonderful time. But lastly, before we wrap up this conversation, where can people find you if they'd like to connect with you?
So you can reach me at CARAS in Gilroy at 381 North First Street, Gilroy, California. Our office number is 408-847-4978. And you can get on our webpage, which is www.caras, CARAS,
Mhm.
southcounty.org. Yeah, so you could find me any of those places.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you again, Raimundo. I hope you have a good rest of your day. I had
You
a really
too.
good time talking with you.
Good seeing you.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you for being here and tuning in to Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community. Your presence in this movement matters. If today's conversation moved you, share it, talk about it, and keep the work going. Together, we're not just imagining change, we're making it. Until next time, stay bold, stay grounded, and stay in the fight.
Every time I feel so mad and sad and bad,